The quiet return ****. Michael Thompson had always been a man of duty, discipline, and deep love for his country. After serving 22 long years in the United States Army, including deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and parts of Eastern Europe, he had seen humanity at its worst and courage at its most resilient. The battlefield shaped him, molded him, and ultimately left invisible scars that would never truly heal. But now, he was finally home, away from the blast zones and sleepless nights filled with gunfire and loss. It was supposed to be a new chapter, one of peace, reflection, and quiet dignity. He chose Willow Creek Meadows, a picturesque suburban neighborhood just outside Austin, Texas, for this next chapter. The community was known for its tree-lined streets, trimmed lawns, and the sort of gentle silence that reminded Michael of Sundays on base when the world paused. The homes were modest but well-kept, and most residents were retirees, young families, or professionals who valued order and tranquility. For Michael, it seemed perfect. His home was a single-story brick house with a wide porch framed by white pillars. The backyard overlooked a narrow creek, and the front lawn was the kind of deep green that would make any homeowner beam with pride. But there was one thing that mattered more to him than anything else: his American flag. On his first morning in the house, Michael walked onto his porch at sunrise with a steaming cup of black coffee and the folded flag tucked under his arm. This wasn't just any flag, it was the same one that had flown above his base camp in Kandahar. It had seen sandstorms, mortar attacks, and the day he lost two of his closest brothers in arms. For him, raising it now wasn't symbolic, it was sacred. He installed a simple flag bracket on one of the porch columns, mounted the pole, and let the fabric unfurl into the morning breeze. As it waved, casting its shadow across the porch steps, Michael stood at attention and saluted. His spine was stiff, his shoulders squared, and for a moment, he wasn't a retired soldier on a porch, he was Sergeant Michael Thompson, still on watch. The days followed a calm rhythm. Wake up at dawn, raise the flag, sip coffee while watching the world come alive. He mowed his lawn every Saturday, waved politely to his neighbors, and helped an elderly couple down the block fix their mailbox after a storm. He attended town hall meetings quietly, usually seated in the back, and always offered a firm handshake and respectful nod to anyone who approached. But then came the letter. Tucked between a water bill and a grocery store coupon flyer, the envelope was crisp and formal, bearing the Willow Creek Meadows Homeowners Association seal. He opened it on his porch, the flag casting a diagonal shadow across the floorboards. Dear Mr. Thompson, it has come to our attention that you have installed an unauthorized flag fixture on the exterior of your property. As per Section 4.3 of the Willow Creek Meadows HOA guidelines, no structural modification or addition may be made to the exterior of a residence without prior approval from the Architectural Committee. You are hereby issued a violation notice and fined $100. The flag must be removed within 48 hours to avoid further penalties. Michael read it twice, then a third time. He looked up at the flag, still fluttering gently in the wind, and felt a mix of confusion and disbelief. This couldn't be real. He had fought for that flag. He had buried friends beneath it. And now, in his own country, in his own neighborhood, he was being fined for flying it. He went inside and called the number listed on the notice. The HOA office line rang twice before a chirpy, automated voice redirected him to a woman named Carol Whitmore, the HOA president. Hello, this is Carol, she answered, her voice clipped and polite. Ms. Whitmore, this is Michael Thompson, over on Sycamore Drive. I received a violation notice this morning about my flag. Ah yes, Mr. Thompson, she replied, sounding more businesslike. Yes, your property is in violation of community guidelines. We do ask that all exterior changes, including flag mounts, be approved in writing beforehand. With all due respect, Michael said slowly, controlling the frustration rising in his chest, that's the American flag. I didn't install a billboard or hang Christmas lights in July. I'm flying the stars and stripes. We respect your service, Mr. Thompson, Carol replied, but the guidelines are there for a reason. If everyone made their own decisions about exterior aesthetics, the neighborhood would quickly lose its cohesion. I spent 22 years protecting that flag, he said. That flag represents every fallen friend I buried overseas. You're telling me I need permission to fly it on my porch? It's not about the flag itself, she answered, her tone beginning to shift into the defensive. It's about the process. Rules exist for everyone, regardless of background. Michael hung up without another word. For the first time since he left the military, his hands trembled with restrained rage. That evening, he sat on his porch and stared at the flag, its edges illuminated by the warm light of the setting sun. He thought about Afghanistan. He thought about the friends who never made it back. He thought about the promises he had made, to honor them, to remember, to stand for something. And he made a decision. The flag would stay. He wasn't taking it down. Not now. Not ever. What began as a quiet return home was now the beginning of a different kind of battle. One not fought with bullets or bombs, but with principles, pride, and the firm resolve of a soldier who had given his all, only to be told he could not honor the very thing he had bled for. The pushback begins ***. 2 days passed, and Michael's flag remained where it had always been, high and proud above his porch. On the third morning, another letter came. This one was firmer, more legal in tone, and bore a warning: failure to comply will result in continued fines and potential legal escalation. It was no longer a polite notice, it was a threat. Michael knew that most people would fold. Most would take the flag down just to avoid trouble. But he also knew something the HOA didn't: he had already faced far worse. The kind of pressure Carol Whitmore and her board tried to apply had no weight compared to what he had endured in Fallujah or Bagram. This wasn't fear. This was principle. That afternoon, Michael walked to the community clubhouse where the HOA meetings were held. He wasn't on the agenda, but he waited patiently in the back while others discussed landscaping budgets and pool maintenance. When the meeting was nearly over, he stood. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he began, his voice steady, "but I received a violation notice for flying the American flag on my own property. I want to know if any of you have ever had to salute a coffin draped in that flag." The room went silent. Eyes turned to the floor. Carol shifted in her chair. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for respect. For the law. For common sense." Carol cleared her throat. "Mr. Thompson, the guidelines are meant to apply uniformly." "Then they need to change," he interrupted. "Because if your rules don't allow the one symbol we all swore to defend, then those rules are broken." He left without waiting for a reply. That night, Michael posted a photo of the letter and a short caption online: "They fined me for flying the flag I fought for." It was shared first by friends, then local veterans, and then by strangers. Within 24 hours, the post had over 30,000 shares. People across Texas, and beyond, were shocked. Outrage poured in. Neighbors who had never spoken more than a few words to Michael dropped by his porch to shake his hand. Someone left a small bouquet of red, white, and blue flowers at his doorstep. Another neighbor, a retired Air Force pilot, put up his own flag in protest. By the end of the week, nearly a dozen homes on Sycamore Drive were flying flags, many for the first time. The HOA issued a general reminder about the architectural approval process, but no one seemed to care. One morning, a news van appeared. A young reporter stepped out and asked for a short interview. Michael hesitated but agreed. Standing on his porch in a crisp polo shirt and jeans, he spoke calmly. "I didn't plan for this. I didn't ask for a fight. But if standing up for that flag makes me the bad guy, then so be it." The segment aired on the evening news. It was picked up by national outlets the next day. HOA spokespersons tried to downplay the issue, calling it a minor misunderstanding, but the damage had been done. Public opinion had already decided. The HOA was the villain. The veteran was the hero. Then the lawyers called. A prominent veterans' rights organization offered to represent Michael pro bono. Their press release stated, "Federal law protects the right of every citizen to fly the American flag. This is not just about one man's porch, it's about national values." The media storm intensified. Political commentators debated the story. Radio hosts weighed in. Even a few celebrities shared Michael's post, calling it un-American to silence a veteran. Michael didn't want fame. He wanted fairness. He returned to his daily routine, wake up, raise the flag, sip his coffee. But now, every morning, he found new notes on his porch. Messages of support. Cards. Small flags. A group of children from the local elementary school sent him a giant poster with crayon drawings of flags and the words, "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." Carol Whitmore, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure. The HOA's phone line was overwhelmed with complaints. Sponsors of the neighborhood summer festival threatened to pull out unless the matter was resolved. Residents began talking about removing her from her post. Michael didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The truth was enough. And still, the flag flew. What had started as a quiet act of remembrance had become a symbol of resistance. One man's decision to stand up had reminded an entire community, and a country, what that flag really stood for. The legal front ***. The call came at 8:17 a.m., just as Michael was lacing up his boots for a walk. The voice on the other end was firm but kind, belonging to an attorney named Jenna Morales from the Liberty Shield Legal Foundation, an organization known for defending veterans' rights. "Mr. Thompson," she began, "we saw your story. We'd be honored to represent you pro bono, if you're willing to take this further." Michael didn't answer immediately. He stared at the flag waving on his porch and thought about the weight of the fight ahead. "Ms. Morales," he replied, "I didn't ask for a battle. But if it's already started, then I won't retreat." Within 48 hours, Michael's case had a legal team, a strategy, and growing national attention. Jenna flew to Austin the next day. A former Marine herself, she greeted Michael with a salute rather than a handshake. They sat on the porch reviewing documents. Jenna explained that federal law, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005, clearly allowed homeowners to fly the flag, and that HOAs couldn't impose unreasonable restrictions. Willow Creek Meadows rules might have looked official, but they couldn't override federal protections. Meanwhile, HOA President Carol Whitmore was scrambling. She called an emergency meeting, then issued a press release claiming the HOA's actions were misunderstood. But the more she spoke, the more she fueled the fire. Michael's supporters weren't backing down. Flags now flew not just in Willow Creek but across neighborhoods in Austin, Houston, Dallas, and beyond. The hashtag Let It Fly was trending nationwide. Late one night, Jenna showed Michael a message from a senator's office asking for a meeting. The case had gone from a local policy dispute to a national debate about patriotism, bureaucracy, and the meaning of freedom. The HOA doubled down. They filed a formal complaint against Michael for non-compliance and inciting community unrest. Their attorney claimed the flag bracket was a permanent architectural change that fell under HOA jurisdiction. Jenna responded with a cease and desist letter and a counterclaim citing federal law. As the legal filings escalated, the media circus grew. Journalists camped outside Michael's home. Protesters showed up, some in support, others angry about perceived attacks on community governance. Still, Michael kept to his routine. He raised the flag every morning. He swept his porch. He answered reporters only when necessary, usually with a quiet nod or a short quote, "The flag stays." When the court date was finally set, Jenna and her team prepared tirelessly. They gathered testimony from constitutional scholars, veterans organizations, even former HOA officials from other states who had lost similar cases. The night before the hearing, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch under a sky dusted with stars, the flag gently fluttering in the dark. He thought about his unit. About Sam, who had died in Mosul. About Kenny, who never got to see his daughter. About the folded flags handed to families in silence. This fight wasn't about defiance. It was about duty. The morning of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Veterans in uniform lined the pews. Some saluted as Michael entered. Jenna stood beside him, her face calm but focused. The HOA's lawyer opened with a dry, technical argument about property aesthetics and process violations. Then Jenna stood. "Your Honor," she began, "this is not about procedure. This is about principle. This man fought for the flag they want to silence. Federal law is clear. Patriotism is not a code violation." She played a short video of Michael saluting the flag at dawn. There were murmurs in the courtroom. A few people wiped their eyes. Michael took the stand last. He spoke softly. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not looking for praise. I just want to raise the flag that my brothers and I swore to protect. That's all." The judge asked a few questions. Then came the silence of deliberation. 30 minutes later, the gavel dropped. Mr. Thompson is within his rights to display the American flag on his property. The HOA's fines are void. Further attempts to suppress this display will be in violation of federal law. Cheers erupted. Veterans stood. Michael exhaled deeply, not in triumph, but in peace. The flag would stay. But the story was far from over. Chapter 4, The Aftershock. Though the courtroom victory had been clear and decisive, Michael knew the battle wasn't entirely over. Victory didn't erase bitterness, nor did it heal the divides that had opened up in his once quiet community. If anything, it had made them more visible. For weeks after the verdict, Michael's home remained a focal point of national conversation. People came by just to see the porch where the battle over a flag had played out. Veterans and their families left folded notes, hand-drawn sketches, and American flag pins on his porch rail. Some brought pies, casseroles, or homemade banners with words like, "Thank you for standing tall." But not everyone was thrilled. Some neighbors began whispering. The HOA board, now under new leadership after Carol Whitmore's resignation, remained largely silent, not issuing apologies, not offering reconciliation. And a few residents, unhappy with the national attention and the influx of strangers to their street, made their displeasure known. One morning, Michael found a letter stuffed in his mailbox without a stamp or return address. It was typed in bold, aggressive font. "You made this place a circus. Take your flag and your headlines somewhere else." Michael read the letter once, then calmly folded it and placed it in a drawer with the rest of the hate mail. He wasn't surprised. He had seen fear disguised as anger before, on battlefields and in briefing rooms. But he wouldn't let it poison him. Instead, he focused on what came next. With the help of Jenna Morales and the Liberty Shield Legal Foundation, Michael began drafting a proposal for a new state bill, one that would explicitly prohibit HOAs in Texas from interfering with veterans displaying the national flag. The bill, unofficially called the Thompson Act, began gaining bipartisan support almost immediately. State representatives invited him to testify at a hearing in Austin. When he walked into the state capitol, wearing his neatly pressed army dress uniform, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Michael paused, visibly moved, before making his way to the podium. "I didn't come here looking for a stage," he began. "I came home looking for peace. All I wanted was to raise a flag. A flag that I saluted while my boots were in sand. A flag that we draped over my best friend's coffin. No board, no bylaw, no committee should ever stand between an American and their right to fly that symbol of freedom." His speech was replayed on television across the country. Lawmakers pledged their support, and within months, the Thompson Act passed unanimously in the state legislature. Other states began drafting similar versions of the law, citing the Willow Creek case as precedent. But despite the public success, Michael remained grounded. Fame never sat comfortably with him. He declined multiple offers for interviews, book deals, and even a documentary, choosing instead to stay on his porch, sipping his coffee at sunrise beneath the flag that still danced in the morning breeze. One afternoon, a local school teacher named Mrs. Hill brought her fifth-grade class to meet him. The students sat cross-legged on his lawn while Michael told them about what the flag really meant, not just the victories, but the sacrifices. Not just the glory, but the grief. Freedom, he told them, isn't just a word. It's a responsibility. It's earned every day, by people you'll never meet, in places you'll never go. But the flag helps you remember them. A student raised her hand and asked, "Are you proud of what you did?" Michael thought for a moment. "I'm proud I stood up when it mattered. And I'm proud that I didn't do it alone." That night, he received a letter from a retired judge in Maine. It read, "You reminded us what citizenship means. Your porch became more than a battleground, it became a lighthouse." Michael sat in his rocking chair, reading the letter twice. He looked out at the quiet street, now lined with more flags than ever before. It wasn't the world he had set out to change, but somehow, a single porch flag had done just that. Ripples across the nation. The Thompson Axe passage sent ripples across the country, far beyond the quiet streets of Willow Creek Meadows. Media coverage framed Michael as an unlikely crusader, a man who had only wanted peace but found himself reshaping policy. But for Michael, the impact wasn't measured in headlines or hashtags. It was in the letters. Each day brought more. Envelopes from coast to coast, handwritten notes from teenagers, Vietnam vets, Gold Star families, even active-duty soldiers overseas. Some thanked him for his service. Others thanked him for standing up when they couldn't. One letter came from a widow in Pennsylvania. Her husband, a retired Navy chief, had been told by his HOA to remove a flagpole he'd installed in their garden. He died before he could fight the decision. She wrote, "I think he would have been proud of you. He would have stood right beside you." Michael placed her letter in a special drawer, one he now called his honor box. It was where he stored the words that mattered. Meanwhile, local politics were shifting. Inspired by Michael's actions, veterans and concerned citizens across the state began attending HOA meetings, questioning rules that had long gone unchallenged. One community in Houston reversed its entire exterior decoration policy after a former Marine showed up waving a copy of the Thompson Act. Jenna Morales, ever committed and tireless, began touring other neighborhoods with Michael, offering free seminars on veterans' rights. They called it the Freedom to Fly Tour. At each stop, veterans stood tall as the crowd applauded them. And at each stop, someone would quietly confess that they had taken down their own flag in fear of fines. Michael's message was always the same: you don't need a uniform to stand for something. You just need courage. Not everyone was supportive. Certain media voices accused Michael of creating division, claiming he had politicized a simple issue. Others argued he had bullied the HOA into submission. But when asked about it, Michael simply smiled. "I didn't ask for this spotlight. I just didn't back away from it." Back in Willow Creek, changes were happening too. The new HOA leadership implemented the Veterans Welcome Initiative, which offered complimentary flag brackets and a special flag-raising ceremony for any veteran moving into the neighborhood. Local businesses joined in, offering discounts to veterans and sponsoring patriotic events. Michael remained humble through it all. He still rose at dawn. Still raised his flag. Still drank his coffee in silence. But now, he often had company. Neighbors stopped by more often. Kids from down the street brought him drawings of eagles and stars. Even former critics, those who had once whispered or complained, began to soften. One day, a man named Richard, who had once filed a complaint against Michael, came over with a six-pack of root beer and an old army cap. "My dad wore this in Korea," Richard said, his voice thick. "I think he'd want you to have it." Michael accepted it with quiet gratitude. As Memorial Day approached, Willow Creek prepared for its largest event yet. The entire neighborhood came together to organize a Veterans Honor Parade. Michael was asked to serve as the Grand Marshal. And at the heart of it all was a porch. Just a porch, really. Brick steps, white pillars, and a flag that had never come down. That evening, under a sky painted with fireworks, Michael sat on that same porch as the wind gently lifted the stars and stripes. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had honored a promise, to never stop defending the flag. Not with a weapon, but with words. Not with rank, but with resolve. And the country had listened. In the hush that followed the final burst of light, Michael whispered to no one in particular, "It was always worth it." Chapter 6, The Symbol and the Legacy. By the time summer faded into fall, the story of Michael Thompson had become part of a larger national narrative. The porch flag had transcended its original purpose. It was no longer just fabric on a pole, it had become a symbol of quiet resistance, of dignity, of one man's unshakable belief in the values that flag represented. Veterans groups across the nation began calling it the Porch Flag Stand, referencing not only Michael's physical act of defiance but the broader movement it inspired. In Colorado, a veteran who had once been fined by his HOA erected a monument at his local VFW post. The plaque at its base read, "In honor of those who fought overseas, and at home, for the right to remember." Michael received awards he never expected, commendations from national veteran associations, a letter of recognition from the governor of Texas, and even an invitation to the White House. But he politely declined the latter. "I appreciate the gesture," he told Jenna, "but I didn't do this for photo ops." Still, he continued working quietly with Jenna and the Liberty Shield team, now helping other veterans navigate HOA restrictions, legal battles, and local ordinances. His porch became an informal headquarters, where stories were exchanged over coffee, and solutions were mapped out on napkins and notepads. Children in the neighborhood no longer passed his house without saluting the flag. Teachers began incorporating his story into local history units. And parents used it as a way to teach their kids about standing up for what's right, even when it's not easy. One morning, just before Veterans Day, Michael awoke to find his entire street lined with flags. Dozens of them. Every house, every mailbox, even trees had red, white, and blue ribbons tied around them. A handmade banner stretched across the street, reading, "Thank you, Sergeant Thompson." He stood on his porch, overwhelmed. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the silence. The kind of respectful stillness that meant something deep. No parades. No cameras. Just gratitude. That night, he found himself on a video call with his former unit members, some scattered across the country, others still overseas. They had heard everything. Watched from afar. And now they smiled back at him from digital windows. "You did good, Mikey," said Reggie, a medic who had saved Michael's life more than once. "You turned a flag into a mission." They raised beers in unison and saluted. And Michael, fighting back tears, did the same. But it wasn't just about him. The change was real. Legislatures in 5 more states had introduced similar laws protecting veterans' rights to display the flag. HOAs were revising outdated policies. And communities were thinking differently, not just about flags, but about what it meant to belong. Michael's health had started to waver. The years overseas had left lingering damage to his lungs and joints. But every day, he still rose, stepped outside, and raised the flag. One evening, Jenna stopped by unexpectedly. She brought a box. Inside was a carefully folded, newly commissioned American flag that had flown over the U.S. Capitol. "It's from them," she said. "From everyone." Michael took it into his hands like it was made of glass. Then he nodded toward the porch. "Let's raise it." Together, in the amber light of dusk, they replaced the old, weathered flag with the new one. But Michael didn't discard the old one. He folded it slowly, reverently, and placed it inside the honor box, next to the letters, drawings, and worn-out cap from Richard. The flag waved crisply in the breeze. It was a new symbol, but the same story. The same fight. The same promise kept. Michael stepped back, shoulders square, chest lifted. And for a moment, he looked like a soldier again, not just one who had survived war, but one who had won peace. And in the quiet that followed, the flag stood, not as a decoration, but as a legacy. Chapter 7, The Final Watch. Winter arrived with a crisp stillness in Willow Creek meadows. Snow dusted the rooftops, and wreaths adorned doorways as the holiday season approached. The flag still flew, faded by the sun, but never lowered. Michael's porch, now an unofficial landmark, remained steady and simple. 2 rocking chairs, a weathered honor box, and that eternal stars and stripes. Michael's health continued to decline. The long-term effects of his deployments, exposure to burn pits, shrapnel still lodged deep, lungs weakened by desert air and battlefield smoke, had begun to wear him down. But he never spoke of pain. He never once complained. Each morning, regardless of the ache, he rose to raise the flag. The neighborhood noticed. People began helping without asking, shoveling his walkway, bringing hot meals, checking in quietly. Children who once saluted the flag now read to him on the porch. And Jenna visited more often, staying longer, sometimes sitting in silence with him, sipping tea while the wind moved gently through the trees. On Christmas Eve, the community held a candlelight vigil outside his home. No one organized it formally, it just happened, dozens of neighbors arriving in coats and scarves, candles flickering in gloved hands. They stood in reverent quiet, watching the flag above them sway gently in the cold night air. Michael opened the door and stepped onto the porch, leaning slightly on a cane. He looked out at the crowd, lit by soft golden light. "Thank you," he said simply. "For letting me belong." A few weeks later, Jenna found Michael asleep in his rocking chair one chilly January morning, the flag already raised and fluttering above. His eyes were closed, hands folded in his lap, a gentle smile resting on his face. He had passed peacefully, in the place he loved most, beneath the flag he had defended in life and honored in peace. The news spread fast, and within hours, his porch became a shrine. People from all over the state arrived with flowers, notes, patches, medals, and miniature flags. Veterans knelt and saluted. Families brought children to tell them the story. The governor declared a day of remembrance. Michael's funeral was held at the Willow Creek Memorial Park. It was standing room only. His casket was draped, as it always should be, in the American flag. Military honors were rendered with precision, rifle volleys echoing across the field, taps played with haunting grace. Jenna delivered the eulogy. Michael Thompson reminded us that patriotism isn't about parades or speeches. It's about sacrifice. About quiet courage. About standing when others sit down. His porch flag wasn't just a protest. It was a promise. One that he kept to the very end. Afterward, a permanent memorial was installed in Willow Creek, a bronze statue of a folded flag resting on a porch rail, with a plaque that read, "In memory of Sergeant Michael Thompson, defender of freedom, guardian of peace, and keeper of the flag." And just beside it, a flagpole rose high into the sky, where the stars and stripes would forever wave, untouched, unchallenged, and unwavering. Michael's legacy lived on not in monuments alone, but in every porch where a flag flew with pride. In every child who learned that doing the right thing might be hard, but always worth it. In every community that remembered that freedom, once earned, must also be protected. The final watch had ended. But the flag still flew. Back in Willow Creek, life went on. Children played in yards, neighbors shared stories over fences, and new families moved in, many unaware at first of the legacy embedded in their neighborhood. But every morning, someone, usually a local volunteer, sometimes a visiting veteran, came to raise the flag on Michael's porch. It became tradition, almost sacred. And at sunset, someone always came to lower it, fold it with reverence, and place it back in the honor box inside. It was no longer just Michael's porch. It belonged to everyone now. A symbol of freedom defended, dignity preserved. And a promise kept, not just by one man, but by a community, a country. And so, the story lived on. Not because it was loud. Not because it was forced. But because it was right. And because the flag still flew. Chapter 8, The Flag and the Future. Years passed, but the porch remained. The house on Sycamore Drive became more than a home, it became a living memorial. Visitors from around the country made quiet pilgrimages to stand on the sidewalk, hand over heart, and gaze at the flag that never came down. Local schools organized field trips. History teachers told students, that's where Sergeant Thompson lived. That's where a man stood for something. Jenna continued the work they had started together. She founded the Porch Flag Foundation, a national nonprofit dedicated to protecting veterans' rights in housing communities. Its mission was simple: no veteran should ever be told they cannot fly the flag they served under. The foundation helped pass similar legislation in over 24 states, each inspired by the Thompson Act. On the 10th anniversary of Michael's passing, Willow Creek held a national remembrance ceremony. A marble walkway lined with etched names of veterans now led to Michael's statue. A wreath of red, white, and blue flowers was placed at its base. Military aircraft flew overhead in tribute. Jenna, now older and grayer but no less determined, gave the keynote address. Michael didn't win medals for this fight, she said. He didn't storm a battlefield or stand before the cameras demanding change. He sat on a porch. He raised a flag. And because of that, a nation remembered what honor really means. Among the crowd sat young soldiers in uniform, newly enlisted. For them, Michael's story wasn't history, it was motivation. One of them, Private First Class Rivera, visited the porch after the ceremony. He stood silently, then saluted the flag before whispering, "You paved the way for all of us." Later that year, a documentary titled The Porch That Changed America aired nationwide. It traced Michael's journey from soldier to quiet hero, blending interviews, archived footage, and the voices of those he impacted. The final scene faded on a close-up of the flag still waving over Sycamore Drive. The closing line read, "Some stories end when the hero is gone." But Michael's didn't. Because the flag still flew, and so did his legacy. Back in Willow Creek, life went on. Children played in yards, neighbors shared stories over fences, and new families moved in, many unaware at first of the legacy embedded in their neighborhood. But every morning, someone, usually a local volunteer, sometimes a visiting veteran, came to raise the flag on Michael's porch. It became tradition, almost sacred. And at sunset, someone always came to lower it, fold it with reverence, and place it back in the honor box inside. A new generation. 25 years after Michael Thompson's quiet stand on Sycamore Drive, the world looked different. Technology had advanced, cities had expanded, and society had evolved, but one thing had not changed: the flag still flew. The Porch Flag Foundation had grown into a national institution, with chapters in all 50 states. Its mission had expanded beyond HOA disputes to offer educational programs, legal aid, and advocacy for veteran families. Its annual report now included a map marked with hundreds of freedom porches, homes where veterans had legally raised the flag after receiving help through the foundation. Among the volunteers was a young woman named Sarah Whitmore. She was the granddaughter of Carol Whitmore, the former HOA president who once led the charge against Michael. Sarah had grown up hearing both sides of the story, but as she reached adulthood, her path diverged from her grandmother's legacy. In college, Sarah wrote her thesis on grassroots patriotism, and Michael's story featured prominently. She later joined the Porch Flag Foundation as a field coordinator, organizing events, supporting legislation, and ensuring no veteran's voice went unheard. At one event, she was asked why she chose this path. "Because we get second chances to do the right thing," she said. "And because heroes come in many forms." The original house on Sycamore Drive, now maintained by the city as a historical site, became a museum, the Michael Thompson Memorial Home. Inside were Michael's uniforms, letters from around the world, and the original honor box. The old rocking chair still sat on the porch, next to a guest book filled with thousands of names. One quiet morning, a young boy visited with his father. The boy stared up at the flag and asked, "Dad, who was Michael Thompson?" His father knelt beside him and replied, "He was a soldier. But more than that, he was someone who stood for what's right. Even when it wasn't easy." That day, the boy signed the guest book with crayon letters. Just 3 words, "Thank you, Michael." The story had come full circle. Not because history repeated itself, but because inspiration had taken root in new soil. And as long as the flag flew on that porch, raised each morning, lowered each evening, the spirit of Michael Thompson remained alive in the hearts of those who believed in freedom, dignity, and quiet courage. Because stories don't end. They echo. And heroes never truly leave us. They live wherever the flag still flies. Chapter 10, The Meaning of the Flag. In the decades following Michael Thompson's stand, the flag he defended came to symbolize more than patriotism. It became a living story, interpreted differently by each person who stopped to look at it. For veterans, it represented sacrifice. For children, inspiration. For immigrants, hope. For communities, unity. The Porch Flag Foundation launched a national initiative called Flags of Memory, collecting personal stories of Americans and their connection to the flag. The project became a best-selling anthology, featuring voices from all walks of life, first responders, teachers, refugees, farmers, and everyday citizens. Each shared a moment when the sight of the flag gave them courage, reminded them of home, or helped them stand taller. Jenna Morales, now retired but still an honorary chair of the foundation, wrote the foreword, "Michael taught us that the flag is not just stitched cloth, it's memory. It's conviction. It's a quiet hand over a beating heart in the face of adversity." A national holiday was proposed and later adopted, National Flag Remembrance Day, held every July 3rd. On this day, Americans were encouraged to visit a freedom porch or raise the flag in honor of someone who had quietly made a difference. On the first Flag Remembrance Day, millions participated across the country. The Thompson home, now a museum and memorial, became the focal point of a national broadcast. Dignitaries, schoolchildren, and veterans gathered as the flag was raised by Sarah Whitmore, the granddaughter of the woman who had once fought to bring it down. The symbolism was undeniable. Time had healed. Legacy had prevailed. As the flag rose that morning, the national anthem played, not from a grand stadium or with elaborate fanfare, but from a single trumpet on the porch. Simple. Solemn. Profound. Inside the museum, digital kiosks played Michael's story. A hologram of his rocking chair greeted guests, while visitors left handwritten notes in the same guest book that had once held a child's crayon-written, "Thank you, Michael." As the ceremony ended, one reporter asked Sarah, "What do you think Michael would say if he could see all of this today?" She looked up at the waving flag and replied, "He'd probably just nod, and say, that's what it was for." And that was enough. Because now, the flag didn't just fly for the past. It flew for the future.